Me too. I love Challenge Day, and it's so much fun, and it's such a big deal for everyone who participates in it, who puts work into it. And it's really interesting how, regardless of how much school spirit you have, you just love Challenge Day.
Yeah, and my brother, he still gets in my face about it. And he graduated from CHS 8 years ago.
That is ridiculous. And my brother Matthew, he, I think, has the least school spirit of any person I maybe have ever met, like, in my life ever. But still, when I get home, he makes some kind of snarky comment. But even though he wasn't a fan of CHS, he was competitive and he liked winning. So, I mean, who doesn't? I understand. Honestly, I'd probably do the same thing too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think everyone has some sort of competitive streak after all. I mean, we all want to succeed. It's just a part of human nature.
Oh, without a doubt. And even if it isn't technically a competition, let's be honest, it's still a competition. And everybody wants to be better than someone else at something. Just think about how many times you've tried to one-up someone or make a better grade than so-and-so on that test.
And I think there's a certain validation in winning.
Definitely.
And it makes you crave more of it too. So not only does it help you to improve or strive to improve more, it also motivates you a little bit.
At the same time, I mean, you do have to remember that in order to be on top, there has to be someone below you. So, there can be a positive thing and that can be a negative thing. On the positive side, it can be the people below you are there because they love you and they're helping you and they're lifting you up and raising you as high as, you are meant to be. And everybody kind of shares in that success, be it a friend, a family member, mentor, because everybody worked together to get to the top. It can be a negative thing whenever you just use other people and you just kind of stand on them and step on them in order to raise yourself higher.
Yeah, and I think we definitely see this type of corruptness in governments. And politicians have this bad reputation of being dishonest and getting where they are without any regard for other people.
Definitely.
And
I've seen that too.
It's definitely prominent in governments ever since governments have begun to exist. And it's definitely taken root as Marxist ideas have instilled in the culture. Marxist critical theory has come from that, and it was created to examine how these ideas have become more prominent not only in everyday society, but also in literature.
Right, and so Marxism, it's the social, economic, and political principles that Karl Marx had advocated for, and especially included the idea of promoting socialism to the point where we could create a potentially classless society. And so the Marxist concepts that we're going to look at today include hegemony, which is the oppression of one class towards another. And then there's classism, which is the prejudice between classes. And then proletariat, which is the lower class and generally the majority who don't have as much money. And then the aristocracy, who's the higher class. They've got all the money, all the power, but they are a very small minority when it comes to the general population.
Yeah, and Marxist critical literary theory can easily be seen throughout all different kinds of literature. So, for example, in Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities, which was set not only before but also during the French Revolution, there are a lot of examples of hegemony and classism from the aristocracy towards the proletariats.
Right, so the aristocracy in this time period was so concerned with getting more money and more power that they couldn't care less about the proletariat lives that were below them. And these people were no longer human lives, but kind of a sort of pedestal for them to stand on. They stepped up on this pedestal not only to exert their power over the people, but also to display it for everybody to see. And it was this kind of extreme devaluation of human lives that drove the proletariat class to eventually rebelling, because they came together and they saw all of these injustices, and they were fed up. So they created this huge insurrection, which ended up being the French Revolution.
And the French Revolution first began when wars outside of France left the country in a lot of debt. And the aristocracy, who had all the money at this time, didn't want to pay for it. So they forced the proletariats to pay for it. And they had practically nothing. And in addition to that, they also made them work in unfair conditions for very little pay. They didn't even care that the people below them were suffering, because the aristocracy weren't the ones that were suffering. And the proletariats fell even further into the aristocracy's cruel treatment, because they were unable to keep up with the harsh conditions that they were living in.
And so all of this is going on whenever the storyline of A Tale of Two Cities picks up. And so throughout the novel, there are so many examples of hegemony and classism that is going on around France that caused the revolution. So before we start really analyzing that, here's kind of what you need to know for what we're going to talk about. Dr. Minette was a doctor in France. He was imprisoned in the Bastille for 18 years before some revolutionaries were able to break him out. And then also we have the Evermond brothers, and they were the people who imprisoned Dr. Minette.
So let's take a look at the scene where Marquis de Evermond ran over an innocent proletariat child. So this demonstrates that he had absolutely no regard for the child's life, nor the parents who had lost their child, but instead he just ran off in order to save his own pride. And if he would have stopped, he would have at least acknowledged the life of the proletariats, but instead he didn't, because he was unable to do so.
And so going back to the example that I was just talking about, the Evermonds were nobles. They were members of the aristocracy, because the Evermond brothers, a long time ago, 18 years ago, raped a proletariat girl and fatally stabbed her brother. And so they called on Dr. Minette to come tend to these dying people. And they realized that Dr. Minette could say something to people. And if people find out what we did, then they could lose their status, they could lose their power, and they did not want that. They wanted to stay a part of the aristocracy. And so whenever they committed these crimes against this proletariat girl and her brother, and Dr. Minette came in and they realized that, he could get them in trouble, he threw Dr. Minette in prison for 18 years, just so they wouldn't get in trouble. You see, even Dr. Minette, they saw Dr. Minette as below them. Not only just the proletariat lives who, the brother and the sister who obviously they didn't see as real people, or else they wouldn't have killed them, but Dr. Minette himself was also seen as below him, and he ended up in prison. And so this is an example of the extreme dehumanization that was going on in France in this time period. This classism and this hegemony was just all over France.
And in addition to this devaluation of human life, this moment also showcases hegemony in action, because the Marquis was enforcing his power over the proletariat lives by stepping on them and stepping over them. He not only demonstrated his title, but he also maintained his power that he had already even established. He abuses his power for his own personal gain rather than for the good of others.
Right, and so we can actually see the same theme of classism through the devaluation of the proletariat lives and also hegemony in a completely different genre. And what we're referring to is the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins.
And in this case, the aristocracy is the capital, and while they live extravagant lives, spending tons and tons of money, the districts form the struggling proletariat class. And the capital looks down upon these districts because of their monopoly of money, and they exert their power over the other districts through the annual Hunger Games as revenge for their previous rebellion against the capital.
So the games, this is when they take 2 representatives from every single district. I mean, the capital doesn't have them because they're running the games. And they force them into an arena and they fight to the death over a course of weeks. And so, obviously, the districts, or most of the districts at least, are not a fan of this. They are being forced to send their own into an arena to die. But the capital sees this as fun and games. They think it's entertainment because these people, they're just on TV. They're below us. They are not one of us. And so in that way, they were the proletariat. And they were being dehumanized, degraded to just toys that they could go and break and throw away and all was fine and dandy.
And another instance in the Hunger Games, whenever the capital demonstrates hegemony, is whenever the capital decides to bomb District 8. So the districts had begun to question the classism enforced by the capital, and the capital would go to any lengths to keep their position as the aristocracy. And the capital specifically targeted a hospital in District 8 in order to showcase their power over the proletariats and helpless people at that. And they were so concerned about remaining on top that they were unable to see the value in these people's lives.
And so, if you look at both of these novels, we see a sort of call to action. And so, in A Tale of Two Cities, this call to action was less of one big moment, but smaller moments, like the death of the proletariat child, which really is not a small moment because it's the loss of a life, but in this scheme of things, it was considered small. And all of these things that just added up and culminated and then turned into this revolution.
So in the Hunger Games, the nightshade berries function as a signal to come together and to fight. Katniss Everdeen, District 12's representative, publicly stands against the capital whenever she suggests that she and Peeta consume the nightshade berries. And by doing so, and consuming them at the same time, and both ending their lives at the same time, the games would end without a victor. And this would go in such a way that the capital had not even planned. So seeing these acts of defiance, people were finally able to pluck up the courage to stand and fight along with Katniss and her cause.
And so these books, they call readers to action to fight against the hegemony and classism and other forms of oppression that they see in their own lives and in the world around them. And so by giving the readers these solid examples of groups of people that have seen that they were being treated unfairly and they picked themselves up and they fought it and succeeded, that just, it gives them all the more reason to try. It gives them hope that, they can escape their own situations too.
And both pieces of literature really demonstrate that they do have the power to transform lives. Even for those people who aren't directly oppressed, we still have the job to raise awareness of injustices that are still present in our world community. And be aware that these things are still occurring. And as more privileged citizens of the world community, we're in charge of stepping up for people who can't step up for themselves and who may not know the position that they're in and that there is a better world. So allow yourself to sympathize with those struggling characters and commit yourself to helping people in the real world who are stuck in these situations.
So we have one novel, A Tale of Two Cities, set way in the past, and we see hegemony and classism that leads to a revolution because there was so much death and pain going on. And then we look at the very far out future and we see the Hunger Games, and these games are causing death and destruction and so much pain, just like they did in the 1800s with the French Revolution. And so today, if you look around the world and look at these different countries with different regimes in charge, you see that a lot of that is going on today. And so we have to fight all of this oppression and injustice. And we have to fight for the good of all human lives, because every life that has existed every life that is existing, and every life that will exist in the future deserves the fullness and best life that we can give them.
And whenever we have an opportunity to influence others, particularly children, we need to teach them that every single human is equal, regardless of their class. So we may not be able to remove the power from those who currently are in charge to more fairly redistribute it, but we might be able to influence future generations and future leaders so that they may do so themselves.
Right. And so I want to challenge you to take a look at your own life, because it all starts with us. And I want you to look and ask yourself, are you on top because the people below you are supporting you and helping you and loving you and just lifting you to where you are meant to be? Or are you on top because you are using these people as a pedestal to put yourself upon, and because you have forced them to be below you?